That first and second resurrection are mentioned, as you probably know well, only in Revelation 20 expressly. Verse 4, this is, I want to tell you, the climax of the whole biblical story. This is the destiny that was intended for Adam, who failed. This is the destiny of the true believers. I saw thrones, very much a royal destiny, and I saw people sitting on them who were given now authority to judge. That word judge is unfortunate. The authority to rule, to reign as kings. That's what it means. Then I saw those persons who, souls, not immortal souls, simply a Hebraism meaning, I saw those persons who'd been beheaded for their witness to the gospel and the witness to Jesus, for their gospel preaching and for the word of God, which incidentally doesn't just mean the Bible, it means the word of the kingdom, Matthew 13:19. They hadn't worshipped the beast, who is that final beast-like political figure mentioned as a terrorizing figure in Revelation, or the image of the beast, had not received the mark of the beast on their foreheads or on their hands. Forehead being the symbol of what you think, your hand being the symbol of what you do. And these people came to life and began to reign with Christ for 1,000 years. And that is called the millennium. That first resurrection then initiates the period of 1,000 years, which is the climax of the whole Bible story. Didn't Paul say the promise to Abraham that he would be heir of the world, that he would have the world as his inheritance? The whole Bible is, what do you get out of this at the end? It's not wrong to say, what's in this for me? The disciples weren't told to shut up and sit down when they asked that question. So that first resurrection is of all of the true faithful across the world who have been true believers from the very start through the many thousands of years. They are going to arise, that's to say, if they've died by that time, if they're alive already, as we know from Thessalonians, they're caught up to meet the Lord in the air. That's not a pre-tribulation rapture. There is no such a thing. It is a rapture there, a catching up, but not a pre-tribulation. There is no such thing as a pre-tribulation rapture, but that resurrection is the one described there as the first resurrection. That's a tremendous honor and privilege to be in that first resurrection. And then it says in the passage we were looking at in Revelation 20, the remainder of the dead. That's to say, all the dead, faithful of all the ages, all those dead who were raised in the first resurrection don't have to be raised in the second resurrection. So the rest of the dead are not going to be raised. That's all of the rest of the dead. All those who are not true believers, they're going to be raised at the end of the 1,000 years. That's really the second resurrection. It doesn't call it exactly the second resurrection, but that's exactly what it is, because you are the first resurrection, and all the remainder of the dead, every other human being who has stepped the earth since the time of Adam, will be raised in the second resurrection and then judged according to what they reasonably could have done. And some of them are going to find their names in the book of life, even in the second resurrection. That's not known to people. God is going to judge them fairly and justly, and they're going to be judged according to what they reasonably could have known. How well they did, they're in the second resurrection. This is called premillennialism. Why that? Because pre means before, and the first resurrection is pre-millennium. Before, in order to initiate and introduce the millennium, and the second resurrection would be all the rest of the dead who were not raised in that first resurrection. So that's a brief statement of millennialism. A disaster is when you say all of that's happened already. Let me ask you this. Do you really think you're ruling the world with Christ now? If you do, you're much mistaken. So there's a big history about the fudging and muddling and confusing of that which is really the pinnacle of the destiny of the human race, especially the true believers who arise in the first resurrection, which is at the parousia, the single, future, visible, spectacular second coming of Jesus.